All right, let me talk about how much you need to save for retirement and why it's important for you to continually contribute to your retirement savings, whether that's a 401k, an IRA, a Roth IRA, a taxable brokerage account. You need to be saving for retirement, especially if you have years left to work. Now, if you're 55 and you're thinking about retiring in the next few months, maybe saving for retirement's different for you. But if you're in your 40s, 50s, 30s, and you're thinking about retiring early or retiring at any time, you need to continue to contribute and save for retirement, no matter what the stock market and the economy is doing. So let me show you why. So we've got three different scenarios here. And the 15, the 10, and the 5% that you see at the top, that is our contribution. So we're going to contribute 15%, we're going to contribute 10%, and we're going to contribute 5%. And we're going to assume that this individual has $50,000 saved for retirement. And we're going to say this individual is 30 years old. So we're going to save from 30 to 60. So for 30 years, and I'm going to show you the difference in the values contributing 5, 10, and 15% and why it's so important to be consistent in your retirement savings and in your contributions. So we're going to go to 60. Now we're going to make some assumptions. The first assumption we're going to make is we're going to use the average annual income for a 30-year-old today, which is about $55,000. So we're going to use the contributions based off of that income value. So for 15%, 10%, and 5%, we're going to contribute $7,500 annually, okay, or monthly, however you want to break it down, for 30 years. Our income's not going to change, so it's going to be the same income for 30 years. But we're going to contribute $7,500 every year consistently. On the 10%, that's $5,000. And on the 5%, it's $2,500. And we're going to do this every year for 30 years. Now, our rate of return, the money in the market, is going to earn 6%. So we're going to assume a 6% rate of return over the long term. Now, the reason I'm doing 6% is because the stock market has averaged 8% since the 1950s. It's averaged about 10% if you go back farther than that to like the 1880s, 1890s. But I'm going to go 6%. I'm going to be super conservative on our growth. Obviously at 30, you're trying to grow your money as much as possible. You want to invest in good, passive S&P 500 index funds offered by Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, whoever. If it's in your 401k, that's in there as well. So you want to be trying to grow this money as much as possible. As you get closer to 60, as you get closer to that quitting time, then you have to rebalance into a little bit being more conservative, which is why we're going to do 6% instead of saying we're going to get 8 and 9% for the next 30 years. So here's what we've got. 15%, 10%, and a 5% contribution over 30 years. Let's start at the 5%. Let's start at the low end. On the 5% contribution for 30 years, you would have $484,000 at the end of 30 years. So you're starting with $50,000 in retirement savings. You contribute $2,500 every year for 30 years. You have $484,000. Is that enough to retire at 60? Probably not, right? Probably not. Now, on the 10% level, you have $682,000. So $5,000 every year for 30 years, $682,000. And at 15% for 30 years, you have $880,000. So it's almost a $200,000 difference in all three of these. Now, I didn't take into account any kind of company contributions or company matches to this or spouses. So if you have a spouse and you're doing the exact same thing, you can double this money. But what I want to show you really with the math of all this is how important it is to just continually do this. 15% is the rule of thumb. It's how much you want to save on your gross income. So if you make $100,000 a year, you want to save $15,000 every year. That's above and beyond before you pay taxes before you do anything, you want to save 15% of your gross income. That's what's going to help you get to retirement, get through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. Okay? So I hope this has helped. I hope this has instilled in you a confidence to continue contributing, continue saving for retirement. Have a great rest of your day. God bless. Bye-bye. So the first rule of thumb that I want to go through today is called the 25X rule. Now, the 25X rule is really simple. And what that says is you take your monthly expenses and you multiply that by 12. So let's say that your monthly expenses are $5,000. Multiply that by 12, and that equals $60,000 annually in monthly expenses. Now you want to include everything in this. So all of your monthly expenses, that's your taxes, your insurances, your food, your fun, everything. So the 25X rule says take your annual expenses and multiply that by 25. And that gives you how much money you need to have saved before retiring, okay? So if you've got $60,000 in annual expenses, multiply that by 25, that's $1.5 million that you need saved in retirement investments and retirement savings before retirement. So that's using your monthly expenses. Now for my clients, I like to actually go even deeper or actually even more conservative, and I like to use their annual salary, okay? So this is using expenses. I want to use salary. So let's say we have a single man or a single woman, whatever, and they make $75,000 a year. Multiply that by 25, okay? So 75,000, let me grab my calculator here. 75,000, multiply that by 25. That's $1.8 million. So $1,875,000. And that's how much you want in retirement savings and investments in order to start considering retirement. Now, what I like about the 25X rule is you can use both these rules and you can say somewhere in the middle is where you need to be. Okay, now this is not an all in all because we're going to talk about some more rules of thumb. But the 25X rule gives you a really good way to kind of say, am I on track? Am I getting to where I need to be? Because you might have this amount saved for retirement, but you might be 45 years old. I don't know if $1.8 million at 45 is going to get you to 100, right? There's a lot of things you have to think about when it comes to your retirement savings and investments. But this is a good idea to find out, have I saved enough for retirement? All right, let's go through this detailed scenario, how to save $1 million for retirement, doing some early retirement planning. And I want to show you how easy it is for you to just adjust some of your savings rates or your contributions to your 401k, or maybe saving into a freedom bucket. That way you have money that you can touch anytime, and how you can do it to save more for retirement. So let's look at this individual. I've got a 40-year-old individual. He is single. Okay, so we have a single individual. He wants to retire at 55. So we've got 15 years before retirement. So 40 to 55, 15 years. His 401k balance is $32,664. Now that is the median 401k balance in America today. So that's why I use that figure, $32,664 in his 401k. Yours could be higher, yours could be lower, but that's the median. Now his savings outside of his 401k is $25,000, meaning he has money in the bank. That is the median saved for a 40-year-old here in America. So we've got $25,000 in the bank. We've got about $32,600 in a 401k. His expenses are $36,000 annually. Again, that is a figure, an average figure for a single 40-year-old here in America. His contribution is $187 per month, and he has a match of $187 from his company. So $187 and $187 is going into his 401k. So we first need to figure out what's the balance of this 401k going to be when he retires. Now his salary right now is $75,000 a year. That's the average salary for a 40-year-old here in America. So I don't think I wrote that down. So $75,000 is his salary. So we want to go, okay, what's this 401k going to be worth at 55? Because we know the savings is not going to be worth much of anything because it's just getting 0.0 nothing. So whatever's going into your savings is not earning anything. What's going into the 401k is invested in the market, so it is earning a rate of return. Now we're going to use 6%. Again, I'm a little bit conservative when it comes to our rates of return. If we get 8, 9, 10%, Dave Ramsey says 12%. If we get that, we're going to high five and chest bump. But when I'm doing an EKG for someone, when we're planning out retirement dollars, I want to be a little bit more cautious, and I would rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and our whole house is blown down by a hurricane. All right, so 6% is going to be our rate of return in retirement. Remember, our contributions on a monthly basis are $375. So that's what's going into our 401k on a monthly basis, and we're going to do this for 15 years. Now the assumption that we're making when we're just doing some base case planning is that our salary is not going to change and we're not going to have any bonuses. So again, this is very basic planning, but this is where you start, especially if you're wanting to build your retirement plan. You've got to start at the base. If you build a house, you have a blueprint first. Before you start picking out your fixtures and your curtains and your floors, you got to know where you're going to dig your hole. So $32,664, 15 years, earning 6%. At the end of 15 years, the 401k would be worth $189,217. This is not enough to retire at 55 years old. That is not enough money to retire at 55. So in this scenario, we've got to look at his budget. We've got to look at all this and say, okay, can we do one of two things? Can we, one, repurpose more money into the 401k, or two, does it make sense to invest outside of the 401k? In his case, he's got a 401k and he has nothing as an investment on the outside. So he doesn't have any kind of non-qualified or a taxable brokerage account. But he is wanting to retire at 55. So if he wants to retire at 55 and we're in this scenario and we're going to look at saying, do we invest in our 401k or outside of our 401k? If taxes aren't an issue, meaning if his taxes are, he's breaking even or he's getting a small refund, then we are probably going to look at investing outside of the 401k at this point. Because if we put the money in the 401k, if it's not a Roth 401k and we retire at 55, first of all, we can use the rule of 55, whether it's a Roth 401k or a traditional 401k. But if it is a traditional 401k, all the money that we pull out of it at age 55 is taxable income. And so what I'd rather do is, if the Roth option is not available here, put the money in what I call a freedom bucket, a taxable brokerage account, just an extra bucket of money where he can pull from it at any time. 50-year-old, 53-year-old, 57, doesn't matter how old you are, and the IRS won't tax you. Now, you will pay taxes on capital gains and interest, but you won't be penalized. Let me say that again. If you put money into a freedom bucket and you pull it out, you won't be penalized, but you will pay taxes on capital gains, dividends, and interest. So let's look at the budget real quick. So let me find my eraser here. So we've got 189 is what we would be at 15 years. So let's erase this. So now we've got to do is budget. So we've got to say, okay, where can we save some more money? So budget, it's not a bad word. So his salary is $75,000 a year. That's his salary. Okay? So if we're looking at his budget, $7,500 of this is going to go to taxes. Okay, so that's an annual figure. And the reason we're doing that is because at $75,000, we have the standard deduction for a single individual. So its effective tax rate, he would only pay $7,500 in taxes. We're not including state taxes in this because he lives in Florida, my state, and there's no state income tax. So if you live in a high state, or if you live in a state that has an income tax or a high income tax, you need to calculate that in, or you need to move to Florida. All right? So $7,500 is what taxes are going to be. His contribution is $22,400 44, that's his contribution. So that's coming out of that $75,000, right? So it's not money that we don't want to adjust that. We want to keep investing into the 401k. And his expenses are $36,000. So this is like his mortgage, grocery bill, having fun, whatever. That's his expenses. So at the end of a year, we've got $29,256 left over. So this is money that can be repurposed for retirement. Now, here's the one thing I always talk to people about. Just because we have $30,000 repurposed doesn't mean we're going to have $30,000 at the end of each year. There's things that come up, right? You have a healthcare emergency. You need to fix something on your house. An air conditioner goes out. You need to buy a new car. Again, this is why we are going to review this on a quarterly basis to make sure that you're not living on rice and beans. I like rice and beans. It's good for my cholesterol, but it's not something that I necessarily want to always be eating because I'm financially strapped saving for retirement. You got to have fun. Whether you're 40, 41, 43, 33, 53, you want to have fun in this life because we don't know how much time we've got. So it's why we need to review this on a quarterly basis. So we've got $29,256 that we can now repurpose for saving in another account for retirement. All right, now we're looking at the scenario. We figured out how much we can save for retirement by doing our budget. We're continuing to invest in our 401k. So let's look at investing outside of the 401k and build our retirement dollars to $1 million. So we're 40 years old. We're going to continue to invest in our 401k. Remember, at the end of 15 years, we'll have about $190,000 in our 401k, continuing to do what we're doing. Now, Freedom Bucket. We're starting with 0 in the Freedom Bucket. 6% is going to be our rate of return for the money going into the market. 15 years, $24.38. That's how much we're going to invest per month, $2,438. That can be adjusted up or down. Again, we need to do our quarterly and annual reviews to make sure that that's the number that we want to continue to invest. At the end of 15 years, this individual would have $709,000. You add those two figures together, that's $899,000 saved for retirement at 55. Now, we're not at our $1 million mark yet. We can't do pixie dust, but we're pretty darn close to what we're trying to accomplish. If this gentleman were to work one more year, continuing to invest, let's say 16 years and 16 years, he would have $988,000. And if we did 2 more years of work, we would hit that $1 million mark. We'd actually be at $1,084,000. So again, when we're looking at retirement planning, when we're doing retirement scenarios, when we're running financial EKGs for clients, which you need a financial EKG to make sure that you can get to retirement, you can get through retirement, and you can protect your ability to stay in retirement. We want to look at all the different scenarios. What if I need to work a couple extra years to make sure I don't retire at the wrong time? That's why you need a financial EKG. You don't want to retire and have to go back to work. So in this case, if he works for an extra year or 2, he gets to that $1 million mark. Now, obviously, we don't know what his retirement expenses are going to be. That's another video. But this is how you save money for retirement and you get to that $1 million mark. I hope this has helped. God bless. Bye-bye. Hey, let me break in here and invite you to download the checklist for retirement. It's a free download. It's in the comment section or the description of this video, and it will help you determine your retirement readiness by giving you a checklist of what you need to know now and for the future in retirement. So let's look at this. Now, this is the Northwestern Mutual Study, and it finds that Americans now believe they need $1.25 million for a comfortable retirement. This is a 20% jump year over year. And listen to this, anticipated retirement age actually climbs from 62.6 to 64 years old. Listen, folks, we're moving in the wrong direction. We need more money and we need more time. But there are steps that we're going to talk about in this video that you can take today and over the next few weeks, months, into the next year to help you retire comfortably and with confidence. Those are two C words that we want in retirement. We want to be comfortable. Now that doesn't mean we live in a mansion and have a big old boat, but we want to have our bills paid. We want to know what money's coming in, what money's going out. We want to be comfortable and we want to have confidence in our retirement plan. So look at this. Adults aged 18 plus anticipate they're going to need $1.25 million to retire comfortably, which is a 20% rise since the year 2021. And at the same time, listen to this, Americans' average retirement savings has dropped 11% from $98,800 to $86,869. So we think we need $1.25 million saved for retirement to retire. And the average American, remember averages are a little skewed, but the average American only has $86,869 saved for retirement. Like we spoke about, the retirement age has risen to 64 from 62. Now, why is the retirement age rising? Well, first of all, individuals understand the longer they work, the more money they're going to save. Also, the closer you can get to your full retirement age, which is 67 years old for the purpose of this video. If you're 67 years old and you claim your Social Security, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefit, which is pretty darn good. If you claim Social Security at 62, you're only going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. It is a haircut of your Social Security. If you wait to 70 or 60, 68, 69, or 70, you're going to get an increased benefit from Social Security. At age 70, you actually get 124% of your full retirement benefit, which is your 67 benefit. Now, you can claim Social Security at 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, or 70. You want to make sure you're claiming at the time that makes sense for you. I've got plenty of videos on when to claim Social Security. Go to the YouTube page and search those out. So really what we're seeing is this period of uncertainty for retirees. We haven't saved enough. We feel like we need to save more. The retirement age is moving higher. What can we do? Let's go through some more of these statistics. Look at this. 4 in 10 people don't think they'll be ready to retire. Now think about that. 4 out of 10 might sound small when you say it like that. Let me say it this way. 40% of individuals wanting to retire, 40% don't think they'll be ready to retire. That is a big number of retirees. Consumer confidence about retirement is at an all-time low. Is that because of the market? Is that because of inflation? Is that because of economic trouble? Is that because of political unrest? It's anyone's guess. But there are steps, again, we're going to talk about this, steps that you can take today to make sure that you have confidence going into retirement. And here's another crazy statistic that I want to point out before we go into some of those steps that are going to help you prepare for retirement. 1/3 of Americans, 33%, believe they're going to live to age 100. And another 33% believe there's a better than 50% chance they're going to outlive their retirement savings. So we think we're going to live longer. We think we're going to outlive our retirement savings. What can we do? We need to take steps today to make sure we do not outlive our retirement savings. I say that all the time. We want to protect your ability to stay in retirement. We do a financial EKG for clients. We want to put together a financial plan that looks at your Social Security, that looks at your retirement assets, that looks at your retirement income, and makes sure that you have enough retirement savings to get you to 100. We want to look at the stock market returns. We want to look at historical returns to make sure you're not going to run out of retirement assets. Now look, here's actually some steps that people have taken to address the possibility of outliving their savings. 25% of surveyed individuals have increased their savings. 22% have put together a financial plan. That's something that you can do with us. And how to do that is in the details section of this video. 21% have purchased investments like stocks, mutual funds, bonds, real estate. 18% discussed options with family. 18% sought advice from advisors looking for counsel. There is great reward in seeking counsel. Maybe not just me as a financial advisor, but talk to your CPA, your tax accountant, your lawyer, your investment advisor. What do you need to do to prepare yourself for retirement? 16% have purchased insurance. And here's the sad thing. 36% of people have not taken any steps to help themselves prepare for retirement or outliving their retirement savings. How much do you need to save for retirement? And is saving 15% of your gross income enough to get you to retirement? Hey, my name is Drew Blackston. I'm a certified retirement counselor, investment advisor representative, and I'm your virtual financial advisor, helping you get to retirement, helping you get through retirement, and protecting your ability to stay in retirement. We're talking about planning for retirement and how much do you need to save for retirement. And I want to look at one of the age-old rules when saving for retirement, which is save 15% of your gross income. And if you do that, you will have enough saved for retirement. I hear this from all kinds of financial professionals. Dave Ramsey is a big proponent of saving 15% of your gross income for retirement. So I want to put that strategy to the test. Is that enough to get you to retirement? First, let's talk about how you can save for retirement. Well, there's a couple rules that you want to consider when thinking about retirement. The first rule you want to think about is called the 25X rule. And what the 25X rule says is that you need to save at least 25 times your annual expenses in order to retire. So let's say your annual expenses are $50,000 a year. So we have $50,000 of annual expenses. We're going to multiply that by 25, and that is how much we need to have saved in retirement accounts. I've lost my calculator. Hold on. All right. So we have $50,000. We're going to multiply that by 25. That's $1.25 million. So what the 25X rule says, if you're going to retire today and your annual expenses are $50,000 a year, you need to have $1.2 million saved for retirement. Now, I like to take it a step further. This is expenses. I also like to look at our income. So let's say that your annual income right now is $65,000. You multiply that by 25. So we'll take 65. We're going to multiply that by 25. That's $1,625,000. So the 25X rule using income says you need somewhere between 1.6 and 1.2 for expenses saved for retirement if you're going to retire today. Now, what does the 25X rule not take into account? The 25X rule does not take into account Social Security. Remember, Social Security is going to be a form of guaranteed income that you're going to get in retirement. Now, the first eligible age that you can claim Social Security is 62. If you do that, you'll get 70% of your full retirement benefit. If you wait until 67 to claim Social Security, you'll get 100% of your full retirement benefit. And if you wait to 70, you'll get 124% of your full retirement benefit. So the 25X rule doesn't take into account your Social Security income. It really just takes into account, hey, I'm going to retire, this is how much I need. All the other factors are set aside. The 25X rule also doesn't take into account any pensions. Maybe you were in the armed services. Maybe you work for the county, the state, the national government, and you get a pension. Well, the 25X rule doesn't take into account any pensions. So you've really got to be cognizant of, okay, am I saving enough for retirement? How do I save more for retirement? Should I save more for retirement? And there's a lot of different factors that go into that. Another rule to consider when saving for retirement is called the replacement ratio. Now, what the replacement ratio is you take your income or your expenses, whichever one you prefer, and you put a replacement ratio on that for retirement. Let me give you an easy example. Let's say that your annual income is $100,000. The replacement ratio says take 80% of that because that's what you're going to need in retirement income. So 80% of $100,000 would be $80,000 in income. So what you're trying to do in retirement is replace your annual income with 80% of that using Social Security, pensions, and your retirement investing accounts. Now, the replacement ratio has been revised based on new data that instead of 80%, it's more like 60%. And the average retiree spends about 1.8% less per year in retirement. Now, what the replacement ratio does not consider, it's a big factor you've got to think about, so I'm going to star it, is inflation. So the replacement ratio is just saying, hey, this is how much retirement income you're going to need in retirement, and you need to base your retirement assets off this income. But what we're saying is we don't consider inflation with the replacement ratio. And I like to call this reversed sequence of return risk. Sequence of return risk is the risk that when you go into retirement, that your assets will fall based on the stock market losses for the first 3 years, right? Think about the year 2000. The market was down from 2000 to 2001, 01 to 02, and 02 to 03. The market fell for those 3 years. So if you retired in 2000, your sequence of return risk was very high because you had a loss on your retirement investing accounts for 3 straight years. What I'm seeing is that it's basically a reverse, and it's a sequence of return risk on your income. What that means is for the early part of your retirement, inflation is high, and so instead of it being $80,000, it's actually higher than that for multiple years because inflation is running hot. So the replacement ratio is a great way, it's a great rule of thumb, but it doesn't take into account inflation, which is a huge factor in your retirement.